Welcome to the Boxing Gossip channel. Please hit subscribe if you are new. Um, I did a video 2 weeks ago now, where I talked at some length about the reported offer that Eddie Hearn and Team Anthony Joshua had made to Deontay Wilder's team, which was reportedly a flat fee of $12.5 million. And in that video, I suggested that my opinion was I had a level of sympathy with Team Wilder. Whilst 12.5 million was much more than he had earned in the past, I didn't see that as the most relevant fact in terms of his worth in the fight. And I suggested that business for these kind of fights was typically done on a split basis, which is what Wilder deserved. I went on to speculate that the fight, in my opinion, was worth a hell of a lot more than Eddie Hearn had valued it with certain media outlets at $40 million, and therefore suggested that the $12.5 million flat fee could be as low as 10, 20, 25% of the overall pot by the time all the money was in. Subsequent to that, I kind of suggested that from my perspective, I was not totally sure that Hearn wanted to make the Wilder fight. I think he believed that there were paydays of a similar magnitude that represented a hell of a lot less risk. Fights with David Haye, fights with Dillian Whyte, fights with a returning Tyson Fury. I believe from an Eddie Hearn perspective, those fights are potentially more attractive. They're domestic opponents. They're opponents who he would possibly see as posing slightly less risk to Anthony Joshua. But at the same time, they're opponents who could possibly generate similar amounts of money, especially, than the likes of a David Haye or the likes of a Tyson Fury, or maybe even a Dillian Whyte, with the hype that there would inevitably be surrounding the bad blood in the lead up to a potential rematch to them. Now, I heard last night about this offer that Deontay Wilder had supposedly made to Anthony Joshua. And the offer was for $50 million. In fact, it was better than $50 million. It was $50 million with an upside of 50% of all revenue above $100 million. In other words, if the fight did $40 million, like Eddie Hearn predicted it would, Joshua would still get his flat fee of $50 million, and Wilder would presumably get nothing. If the fight did $75 million, Joshua would get his flat fee of $50 and Wilder would get $25 million. If the fight did $120 million, then Joshua would get his flat fee of $50 and half of the $20 million on top. So Joshua would get $60 million. So I thought it sounded like a great offer. Great offer. There's that famous clip where Joshua said that he'd take the fight if they wanted to offer him $50 million. And I thought Hearn and Joshua were potentially in trouble when I heard this news. Joshua was on record saying he'd take the fight for $50 million. Hearn has made a repeated habit of saying, why don't they offer us to fight? If they're serious, why don't they offer us to fight? And I also thought Hearn has been quite vocal about the fight doing $40 to $50 million revenue. If he genuinely believes that to be the case, then surely he's going to jump at the opportunity to get $50 million as a flat fee. I thought that Team Wilder potentially had Joshua over a barrel here and in all sorts of trouble. But today I've listened to the IFL TV interview with Eddie Hearn, and it kind of operates as his immediate reaction to this. And it does seem to be bizarre circumstances here. So it appears that the offer was made from Deontay Wilder's personal account. It appears that the offer was made without a fight contract. And it appears that the offer's been made with a 24-hour deadline. Now, in all honesty, whether you're an Eddie Hearn fan or an Eddie Hearn hater, how can that offer be accepted within 24 hours without a contract? There's all sorts of T's and C's that would need to be squared off, especially the broadcasters, because Joshua obviously has certain other obligations with broadcast partners and sponsorship partners that he's obliged to because of pre-standing deals. So, yeah, it seemed a slightly odd set of circumstances, and a fighter whose net wealth is reportedly substantially lower than $50 million, a fighter making another fighter an offer far greater than their net wealth without a venue, without a broadcast deal, without a contract, direct off their personal email, with a 24-hour acceptance period kind of doesn't quite add up. Look, I'm just trying to call it how I see it here. When I was initially reacting to the $12.5 billion deal, I was saying I'm Team Wilder. I was saying Team Joshua are in the wrong. Team Joshua don't want to make the fight. If they're making an offer like that, they're putting Wilder in a position that he has to reject the offer. And that was my fair, honest, objective viewpoint. Having said that, I believe this offer from Deontay Wilder is potentially just as much smoke and mirrors. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. You can't really chuck out an offer for a fight of this magnitude without making any of the terms clear and accepting a 24-hour notice period. Making it only live for 24 hours. It's just not real business, and it kind of smacks of something that's been done for press, publicity, PR. If this was a legitimate offer, you'd have a venue, you'd have a broadcast deal. It probably wouldn't be from the fighter's personal email account. You'd probably want to discuss it rather than just giving 24 hours to make the biggest fight of the year. It all seems very, very strange. Now, the WBC have this bizarre situation, and Eddie Hearn's referred to it, which says that Dominic Breazeale is the first mandatory, and Ortiz versus Dillian Whyte is the second mandatory. So we understand that the Dominic Breazeale-Deontay Wilder fight is going to be made first. And Eddie Hearn has made numerous references to the fact that Deontay Wilder has already reportedly agreed a fight behind the scenes with Dominic Breazeale, which would tie in with the recent WBC statement surrounding the position of their title. So look, that's not conclusive. We'll have to see how that picture plays out. But I think, in fairness to Eddie Hearn, what he is saying about Wilder putting this offer out there for press and publicity reasons, and the fact that Eddie Hearn expects him to announce a fight with Dominic Breazeale, explaining that it's his mandatory in short order, I think Eddie Hearn is likely. Sadly, I think this is a case of both sides being as bad as each other. I believe the initial $12.5 million offer from Team Hearn and Team Matchroom was slightly disingenuous. And I also believe that this offer from Deontay Wilder is potentially equally as disingenuous. Now, if Wilder and his team are to provide further details to Team Joshua and Team Hearn, including a fight contract, a venue, a broadcast deal, etc., obviously proof of the funds, if Wilder and his team can produce that, then this is a very serious offer that Eddie Hearn and Joshua should clearly accept. And if they didn't accept it, it will very clearly be a duck. And I will be coming out and saying that on this channel, telling you that in my opinion it's a duck, if that information is made available. However, in the absence of that, it does appear to be posturing. And my take is it's not really an offer that Team Joshua and Team Matchroom can accept. What would they be agreeing to? There's no contract, there's no venue. It's just hype at the minute. So I think it's a case of both sides being as bad as each other. I'm not totally sure that there is genuine interest in making this fight next. I think both guys want the fight. I don't think either guy is necessarily scared of the fight. It's just whether they want it next. Wilder seems to be going down a Dominic Breazeale route. That ties in with what the WBC seem to be saying. Joshua's obviously got other options. Jarrell Miller's being talked about. I still think David Haye is potentially being talked about. I still think Dillian Whyte in a rematch is potentially being talked about. We really have to see. But look, I'm not saying that I'm with either side here. I'm going to say that I think they're both as bad as each other. And, this new offer from Deontay Wilder is not really how business is done. And you simply can't put a 24-hour expiration date on an offer unless you're able to give, some of the main details. And frankly, Joshua's previous obligations with broadcasters, etc., probably actually prevent him from agreeing to the offer unless these details are made clear. So, more hype. Reason I'm doing a video on it, a lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people want to hear on it. I've obviously had a lot of messages asking for my thoughts on it. So, rather than spending an elongated time replying to each one, sometimes worth putting it down in a video, and hopefully people will find it interesting. Let me know your thoughts on this saga. Hit me up with your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed the content, as ever, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new, you haven't already done so, do take the time to subscribe. Many thanks for tuning in.